We live in the age of crisis. We see them coming at us wave after wave, and I think we're already in the mode of, we think that these are short-term, we fix them, and we can go back to our business as usual, to our everyday lives. We want to move on. I think it's in human nature to want to move on. And we can move on, but we can't, because these are not short-term crises. We think we have done enough. We have fixed COVID, perhaps. We have put out the wildfire, and we can go back to our life as usual. But again, we haven't done enough. We think we cannot change. Capitalism, such a big thing, we cannot change it. Cities, such a big infrastructure, we cannot really change them. Central banks, who can change them? But I'm to tell you here, we can, and we should, and we must. And what I want to show you is some of the glimpses how some public organizations are doing it, how they are taking this idea that we actually can mobilize resources, can mobilize public sector organizations, and change fundamentally the way we do things. And I think we have to start from the very fact how we think about bureaucracy. How do we conceptualize it? Of course, we think about bureaucracy as being something slow and dull and focusing on stable, rule-based expertise. And then at the edges, we have those agile, very dynamic agencies. But I think we have to think about public sector. Each organization has to do both. They have to have this DNA of agile capabilities, of dynamic capabilities, but also providing for long-term solutions. Somebody needs to collect the garbage. Electricity needs to be there. So you need to have both of these kind of conceptual concepts in the public organizations. And I try to show you today how this can be done. I think we have to start from actually rethinking also innovation. We think about innovation as we needed more of it. We need just to be innovative. We need more economic growth, and then that sort of somehow solves everything. The same with innovation. But at the same time, I think innovation, we need to understand, is a very political matter. It's not about how much growth, but it's about what kind of growth, what kind of innovations we actually want. In health, in education, in green, everything needs to be discussed. So it's not only about politicians discussing it, or us being citizens, but it really should be in the DNA of every public organization. Discuss the purpose. Why are we doing this? So it's not only about following rules and political will, but it's actually really being able to discuss the direction of where we are going. So this is, we have to rethink bureaucracy and innovation. So it's both of these things. And I propose that we need actually an activist bureaucracy. We need bureaucrats who are not just neutral. Neutrality is great, expertise is great, but we need to have organizational DNA that is actually activist, that we want to go out there and solve problems that are fundamental. Not only when the crisis is there, then we all get together and we get the vaccines, we get everything that needs to be done. But actually every day needs to be like that. So how do we get there? How do we actually change our fundamental capabilities towards something like that? And I want to bring you two examples. These will be glimpses, of course, because this is an incredibly short time. And I think we all know public sector, the main problem is silos. We are specialized. This is the 200 years old bureaucracies that we are working in. We work in silos because this is how we specialize. If you're a health department, you need people who know health, you specialize. But of course, this is how you don't solve problems anymore, because now we realize that health is also very much about prevention. It's about movement, all of those things. So we have to actually bring those ideas together somehow. So how do we radically reframe policy issues? This is an example from Vinnova in Sweden. So they worked for 2 years, and they came up with a mission for Swedish government. We want every street in Sweden to be healthy, sustainable, and vibrant. Sounds really nice, but if you think about that, it's an incredibly difficult ask. Healthy street. Go out to Berlin street. Are they healthy? No. How do you get them healthy? It's really difficult. Sustainable, even more difficult. Vibrant, my God. There are cars, very vibrant. So how do you make that vibrant? So it requires something that, if you're a traffic department, you see the street and you see traffic. Of course you need traffic, because that's your specialization. You want to make traffic more efficient. But if you actually put those different departments together, this is how you will see the street. Traffic is maybe the least of your worries. Health is well-being, vibrancy, social life. So how do you do that? Do you do a big plan, erase everything? Of course not. We are living in big infrastructures built through hundreds of years. So you start small. You take this street corner, you leave the cars out, you put some trees there, bikes. You start to learn, how do we do that? How do we get something different? And again, then you go on and on and on. This becomes your everyday life. Your everyday life is not anymore to look at traffic, to have less cars in the city, because that's the wrong question to ask. You need to reframe it. How do we get to this kind of streets? There are thousands of streets in a country like Sweden, in Berlin. So how do you do that? This requires enormous working together, very different kind of capabilities in government. So this is one example. Second example, transforming digital transformation. Digital transformation is so cool. We all want to be digitally transformed. But it's it's a very difficult thing to do. My own country, Estonia, everybody knows Estonia's digital transformation. Estonia did one thing really well, which is digital identity. It's a super frugal system of digital transformation. It's so cheap, nobody would believe it. It was so easy to do. But it does only one thing really well. It saves you time. But time is not everything. It doesn't really change public services. The schools, health, they run in the same way. It doesn't matter whether you log into your system digitally or in analog ways. So it doesn't change it. Identity is not enough. We should go beyond that. 10 years later, 2011, UK government creates an absolutely fantastic website, cow.uk, because they answered their question, what does the citizen want online from government? I don't want pictures. I don't want politicians. I want answers. How do I get COVID vaccination? And that is a search bar. It's a fantastically done website that really transformed a lot of the back office as well. It was driven by user experience. They really wanted to understand why people go online. They shut down thousands of websites because nobody ever used them. But you want to know how to get vaccinated. But that's not enough, because that doesn't really change our relationship to Facebook, does it now? Facebook can still go on and ruin our societies, ruin our elections. It doesn't change that. So it's not enough. And here you have this idea of digital sovereignty. We actually, because we create the data, we should actually own it, don't we? And this is what you see in places like Barcelona. This is what they try to do. How do we create systems where citizens actually own the data and actually use the data for decision making? I don't want cars on my street. How can I use the data to actually prove that? I don't want Airbnb on my street. How can I do it? So it's not only saying no to those companies, but actually taking them on day came, being as good as Airbnb is on data. So how do you do that? You have to hire people who are good at that. You have to have leaders who do that. So it's about, again, doing that every day rather than once in a crisis mode. So what are those dynamic capabilities of activist bureaucracy? And I give you 3 things, and you can go away and ask your organizations whether they do these things. Sense-making. Do you utilize multiple viewpoints to analyze what you do? Or do you hire the same kind of people? If you are in health department, do you hire well-being? Or if you are in traffic department, do you hire health specialists? You probably don't. Do you hire ethnographers? You probably don't. So we have a very siloed view. Remember the traffic department looking at the street, seeing only cars. So you have to have sense-making capabilities that are really diverse. This takes time, effort, and money, but it's worth investing. You have to be able to connect, and not only to, the 50 people you always talk to. How do you talk to people who are not the same color as you are, not the same gender, religion? We live in very multicultural societies. How do we actually make their voices really heard? What are the practices? And how do you actually talk to people in another city department or government department who really don't care about what I do? How do I connect? And again, this is not one day, but this is every day. How do we do that well? How do we actually shape? How do we take on Airbnbs and others and really shape digital space for citizens? How do we shape the streets? So it's not about doing a policy document, which we all are very good at, 20 pages of highly educated text, and nobody cares about it. Because it doesn't really change anything, because there is another bureaucrat who does the same thing. So how do we actually shape things, actually engage in innovation? You can read more about that in my upcoming book. You can order it online, if you like what I said. And coming back to, we think we cannot change the cities, the central banks, the digital environment. We can. Thank you very much.